Welcome to the Future of Surrogacy, the podcast that explores the people, the innovations, and the ideas building the next generation of surrogacy. Today's conversation is about a part of surrogacy that everyone knows is important, but very few people truly understand: insurance. Insurance is one of the major infrastructure safeguards keeping everyone protected on these journeys. And yes, at some point that means we have to assign dollar amounts to things like fallopian tubes and hysterectomies, which is uncomfortable and unavoidable. To help us make sense of all this, I'm joined by Sarah Paige, the CEO of Art Risk Solutions. Sarah has been working in assisted reproduction insurance since 2010 and is one of the most trusted voices in this space. We're going to have a pretty candid conversation, including talking about some agencies that try to game the process, which is also called insurance fraud, why timing matters more than people think, how insurance can be a competitive advantage for agencies, and where surrogacy insurance is headed. So with that, welcome to the Future of Surrogacy, Sarah.
Thank you, Erin. I'm super happy to be here.
So we haven't seen each other since Seeds,
Yes.
last Seeds, and already the new Seeds is about to happen in a few months.
Yeah,
In Hotlanta.
I know. I'm excited. I like going there and seeing everybody, and it's a good time to connect.
Okay, so we're going to try to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to ask you hopefully some questions that you feel comfortable answering about the annoying things,
Sure.
that
Yeah.
like, oh boy, here we go with an
Yeah.
agency to help agencies and attorneys dial in how they're thinking about insurance. And we'll hopefully do some funnies.
Love it.
Cool. Okay, so imagine it's a Monday morning art risk team meeting, and somebody is talking about an agency that has made a request, and everybody in the room goes, oh boy. So, what question or request would an agency make that would garner that type of a response from your team?
I love this. There's a couple. The first one, honestly, and it's not an oh boy in a bad way, and it's just more of an oh boy in like a, oh, we really hate to have to answer this question because we don't like to disappoint people. The first one is, hey, I have a GC that's now pregnant. Can I get her regular insurance? And it's outside of open enrollment, and there's no qualifying life event, and the agency just didn't know. To be perfectly honest, they're newer. They didn't understand how insurance worked. And so they come to us like, can I get this? She's pregnant now. That is always like ooh, we can, but it's going to be $30,000 to $35,000 instead of what you anticipated. So I think that's the first one that we do get still quite frequently.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. For anybody that listens to this that's newer, what is the time frame of open enrollment?
So open enrollment is typically November 1st through January 15th. There's some state caveats, and we're still kind of in it for a couple states through the 31st. And then into starting in 2026, but for 2027, it's actually going to reduce down significantly from November 1st through December 15th only. So it's hard because if you're a newer agency, or an agency that maybe typically doesn't do open enrollment because you're smaller, people don't always know that there's a super tight time frame that you have to do. I think that's probably one of the big ones. And then the other one that we're like, oh, we can't do that is sometimes we get it, but agencies asking us to overlook certain situations, like a GC who moves to another state but doesn't really move to another state. She's just delivering in another state. And they want to get insurance and use her travel to that state as a qualifying life event, as a move, which you cannot do because she's not going to reside in that state. We get that a lot. A lot of agencies try and play a little bit of a game with that.
Yeah.
Of like, well, she's going there to deliver, so she's moving there. And I'm like, well, does she have a rental document? Is she moving banks? Are her children enrolled in the new school? Like, there's so many things that can be asked for. And the agencies are not always upfront.
Okay, so is that game that you're saying that agencies sometimes play, is that game actually called insurance fraud?
Yeah, it's called insurance fraud. Okay. And which is what we have to tell them, like, hey, we get what you're saying and it's insurance fraud. And now that we know, we cannot do it. We're pretty hard and fast about that in our office. So sometimes God, I love it. So, I mean, it's fun. It becomes comical to me at some point in time, but when it happens and then they're like, "Oh, well, now she is moving there." And I'm like, "Is she though? Are we
With the
positive
air
about?"
quote.
Yeah, she is moving. And so sometimes the agencies will come back knowing what our lines are and try and still like push it with telling us things that are not necessarily true. But then when we get on with the GC, we ask all the questions. Oh, so is this a move? And a lot of times we catch it there. And then we have to stop the application, go back to the agency and say, hey,
Doesn't
she's
qualify.
not moving,
Yeah.
so we
Yeah.
can't do this.
Okay, so it's around $30,000 to $35,000 if they don't for non-open enrollment
Yeah,
insurance, if they don't hit that window and paying. Is that something where because it's so hard to time these journeys in terms of, like, who's actually gonna get pregnant or
right,
when a match happens? 2 things cross my mind on that. The first one is, okay, like, how do we use technology to create some sense of urgency? You need to get your application done in the next 3 days because according to our timeline, you're gonna be right up against the open enrollment deadline. So that's
right,
one thing. But
right.
number 2 is, could IPs ever take out a plan on a GC that's gonna be pregnant
So,
to hit
no,
the deadline?
they
Okay.
can't. Yeah, and we've talked to some of the insurance companies, like the mainstream ones, Cigna, United Healthcare, that sometimes will be a little flexible in that. Cigna on some employer plans will allow you to add the gestational carrier to your plan. It's usually on an employer level. It doesn't happen very often. The plans that are like 30 to 35,000, they are written in the intended parent name. And then you add the GC on as a dependent, but they're very specific for surrogacy. So you don't have law of large numbers in that capacity. You're just dealing with everything being at 100% usage because you're dealing with a surrogate pregnancy. When on there is pregnant at the time, likely is going to deliver. So they're like, they have to raise the rates to, of course, it's an insurance company, pay for the claims and staff and licensing and everything else that they need to pay for.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't know, like, I'm an IP, I know that I'm
Yeah,
gonna get matched because my agency was like, "You're definitely gonna get matched in the next 6 months," but that 6 months might be outside open enrollment, like,
right.
can I take out an insurance plan now knowing that it's gonna be less expensive versus having to
Yeah.
get it outside of the dates?
So what we've encouraged, I mean, technically the answer is no. What we've encouraged agencies to do is to take it out on the GC. So when they get into your program, even if they're not matched, if you feel like they're a good candidate and that they likely will be matched soon, then get them ACA insurance and have the intended parents pay back those premiums once matched. Or as an agency, depending on who you are, take on the cost as part of your marketing expenses, essentially, for having a GC that's ready to go with viable insurance.
Yeah, okay, the analogy that's popping into my head is when people are selling their homes and they're getting the inspection done ahead of time.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
It is very, very similar to that. Hedge your bets, get her
yeah.
the insurance,
If you
and
know
then
you
let
got
it
a great house.
100%. And then you just hold it for a couple months. And if she doesn't get matched, then you can cancel the insurance. And yes, you might be out $1,000, but also you could have had a wonderful match and have intended parents have a baby by the end of the year. So
Right, and those IPs, eventual IPs will be so grateful.
that they're not paying 35,000, right? I'm like, a couple $1,000s to add on to maybe 15, 20 is not the same as 30 to 35 pretty much guaranteed.
Yeah. What do agencies think is a reasonable insurance ask that in reality makes you say that's not how insurance works? Are there any things outside of insurance fraud that that come to
Sorry,
mind?
just a funny one. Um, sometimes, honestly, what we get more is limits. They're wanting, like, on the specialty products, so on loss of reproductive organs or on life insurance. Not everyone always understands that there's still limits to those of what they will cover. So sometimes the asks are larger than what the insurance company will cover. So maybe they come back and like, I want $100,000 on a loss of reproductive organ. And I'm like, well, the insurance company is willing to do up to 50.
This is one of my questions. Is like, first
Yeah.
of all, you say it, it just kind of rolls off your tongue now, and
I
I'm
know. And
so
it's
sorry.
terrible.
But when you start it, have to be like, wait, we're talking about like if somebody loses a
Yeah.
fallopian tube, like how do
Yes.
we price that out?
Yeah. They're priced out individually. So like a single fallopian tube, a single ovary or double, or if you have a partial hysterectomy versus a full hysterectomy, like it is all in the contract, all itemized out on the price point for every single one of them.
I've seen it.
Yeah. Isn't it wild?
Yeah, and I'm like, what do our other organs like? Do livers have a value?
I, yeah.
I don't have
Yeah.
any idea, like, does a
And
lot.
it's supposed to help for, like, obviously, the potential of, like, pain and suffering and compensation for that, not directly for harvesting right, an organ, but, like, yeah, a weird thing to talk about. It's a weird
Oh
I'm
my
sure
gosh.
even when they're dealing with it in contract, like, I think it's odd to talk about, and it does roll off the tongue, but it still gives me pause every time of like, "Hey, can you look in your contract and see specifically what your amounts are on this woman's reproductive organs?"
Do you get pushback when a surrogate's like, "No, my fallopian tubes are amazing."
Yeah, I don't deal with any of that. That's all in contract, and
Okay,
so by the time it gets to me, I'm like, "Just tell me the numbers, and we'll see what I can do insurance-wise for you to
yeah,
get that
okay,
covered."
okay.
So,
That is crazy to me, and then when you're onboarding a new team member, are you like, "Okay, so there's this strange part to our business."
our whole business is strange, Erin. Like, or when I'm hiring anybody, like, I have to be so clear about what we deal with, who we deal with, what we deal with, including selective reductions, that we have
Yeah,
to treat every single client with grace and dignity, whether we agree with anything or not. And that, yes, you have to sit there and have conversations over and over about miscarriage and loss and losing fallopian tubes and all of the things that are worrisome, and have it from a very professional yet kind and empathetic standpoint every time we're talking to somebody. And I have had to personally catch myself multiple times not being jaded by the conversation because we have it so often,
yeah,
and really being able to take a step back and lead with that kindness of like, hey, we're going to be entering into the conversation part where a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but it does need to be talked about, which is in the event that something goes wrong. And how do we protect all parties in this? You as an intended parent financially, the gestational carrier, making sure she has the right coverage and can see the right doctors, and then overall the journey. It's hard. I mean, there are times where I've had intended parents who are like, I don't want to talk about this. I'm like, because they've had so much loss that it's
yeah,
very difficult to bring that up again. And we said, okay, understood. I can at least send you the material so you can read it and digest it at your own pace.
yeah,
And we're here for questions and we can answer them at that point. But it's different when you do this day in, day out. You have to continually remind yourself this is a different human on the
right,
line who's doing this for the first time potentially.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, in terms of being jaded, I'm curious, this is getting to be like a gossipy episode.
Yeah.
Um, do you have, like do you see people trying to use insurance as, trying to get as much as they possibly can out of it? Or I
Well,
don't know how to phrase this question right.
I don't see it a lot on the GC side. Honestly, there's times where I look at contracts where I'm talking to an intended parent and I'll tell the intended parent, really? They put it in for that, like, that little? And, like, because I'm surprised, like, anytime I see a contract where life insurance is 250,000, I don't get it. I don't know why. I'm like, as a GC's attorney, I would have pushed back 100% on that and would have
Or
said,
a lot
"Hey,
more.
industry standard is 500 right now, and a lot of people are pushing for 750." So, and the cost is so nominal to the intended parent. So there's things where I will push back, or like if I'm on the phone with a gestational carrier and they ask me questions, I'm like, nope, I wouldn't. Here's what we're typically writing. So I would push back and I would ask for more. So I tend to see it in a different way
Okay,
that and I'm not this is not on the intended parent side typically either. This is just a GC not knowing what she can ask for
right.
in that capacity to bring it up to what we would consider a normal rate at this point in time. 250,000 was the standard when I joined the community 16 years ago. That's not it anymore. Like, I look at that, I'm like, let's do better, make sure everyone's educated on that. I think the wildest thing that I've ever had an intended parent say to me was, well, she's a stay-at-home mom, so why does she need life insurance? And I was like, huh, hold please. And I got, like, a little defensive, and I was like, let me tell you why." And I was like, "Let's talk about what a stay-at-home mom does. Like, hire a chef, hire housekeeping, hire a chauffeur, hire a personal assistant to go do everything day to day, hire your, childcare, hire your tutor."
Yes, like,
Right.
all how it
Hire
works.
everything and then come back to me and talk to me about what a stay-at-home mom does.
And so, can you say, like, "I don't wanna work with these people?" Or are there particular agencies that when you're looking at bringing them on, that like, bring on a certain type of intended parent that you're like, "Oh boy, here's agency A's parents."
The only time it becomes an issue is where there's an educational miss, where The intended parents aren't being informed prior to coming to us, and so we're having to break a lot of news to them. That's really hard. The agencies do, most of them do a very nice job of giving them kind of a heads on, okay, we're going to get you connected with insurance. You're going to start to work through this. These are key things that you want to be thinking about. But we're going to set it up with them. They're going to take you through everything, right? When there's no communication in that and we just get an email from the intended parent that says, hi, I was told to talk to you. I don't know who the agency is. I don't know who the IPs are, the GC. I know nothing about them. Not that we can't do our job. We can, but it is increasingly difficult. And then that typically means I'm going to be breaking a lot of news to them that financially impacts them. And they have made decisions that they can't reverse at this point in time.
Like what?
So, industry norm would be that you do the insurance review before you match somebody so that you know exactly what kind of insurance the GC has, so they financially know what they're getting into for maternity. There still are agencies that are not doing that. So, they get matched and then they come to us and we do the review. And then we are breaking the news to that intended parent that there is not viable health insurance because they're told they have insurance, but they're not told that it's whether it's surrogate friendly or not. So like we're breaking that news to them and then having to have the discussion of, oh, and by the way, we're outside of open enrollment. And so now we need to either wait and pause your journey until we can get it into an open enrollment factor, or we're looking at a $35,000 plan. Having to have that kind of a conversation out of the blue where they're not even, it's not even on their radar at
Yeah.
all is
Yeah.
really hard.
And I'm sure you do plenty of education with agencies in terms of like, here's all the materials agencies that you would need to inform your.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And these are the agencies that don't attend. They don't come to the webinars. They haven't opened the emails that go out. For every year we offer to meet with our agencies and they choose not to set up the meetings. It's the agencies that typically are just like, I got this. And you're like, hey, there's a community and we all have great resources from the third parties who can help you, but you've got to use your resources. I can lead you as much as I can lead you, but short of me coming to your place of business, sitting you down and saying, I need you to read this and follow my instructions, I can't do that.
Can't make them drink the water. Yeah.
Right. I can't make you drink the water. Yeah.
Well, okay, so a lot of that the places that our technology plays is on that kind of, like, intake and getting
Yeah.
to pre-match, and so I'm curious, are you integrating with any kinds of, like, technology platforms that the agencies use to streamline that process? So, it'd, like, trigger a task like, "Okay, art risk review time, make sure we upload surrogate insurance documents."
Yeah, so I mean right now no, what we typically do is set out basically like a timeline of events. Here's when everything should be talked about. We're really trying to push connect us at match because we should know what insurance is available. We can set them up on a timeline of which then they can follow like, okay, we're going to talk to you about these three things right now. So we can get them rolling. Here's what's coming up. We want to talk to you when you're finalizing legal. So then we can talk about the actual cost of some of the items that are going to be contingent upon what's inside the contract. So we're asking almost to talk to them more often than we have in the past. Typically, people came to us after legal or right after transfer and we're like, okay, we're ready. And I'm like, hey, cool. So now I'm trying to push it so far back that I'm like, okay, let us connect us at match. So we can have all these great conversations, get them prepared for what they need to do, get you as an agency prepared for what you need to do, and then connect during these other periods of time during that journey.
Okay, and then timeline and cost. I'm now
Yeah.
what is involved in terms of, like, how fast can you turn something around? And then is there, like, a flat fee cost?
So there's never, I wish there was a flat fee cost. There's never a flat fee cost because everything is dependent on the specific insurances. We get down into 4 categories where we said, okay, if you're an employed surrogate who has surrogate friendly insurance, then you're probably going to spend between $4,000 to $12,000 on additional insurances. If you are not employed, and you don't have good insurance, then you're probably going to spend anywhere from 15 to 25,000. So we did something where we broke it down into
Pretty big
4.
difference.
It's a huge difference. If you come not having viable health insurance can very much increase the cost for an intended parents by a minimum of $15,000. So,
Sarah,
yeah,
why then aren't we doing these evaluations on surrogates even earlier as part of the qualification process? Because that's
it should
a
be part of the qualification process. 100%. They should bring a surrogate in after they go through like the SIMB screening part of it.
Right.
They should bring the surrogate in right then and review their insurance 100%. And a lot of agencies are, but you still have ones that are not. And then they're matching, not knowing what that landscape, I call it the insurance landscape, what the insurance landscape looks like. And I think it can create a lot of disappointment and a lot of frustration for intended parents not understanding that there's such a differentiation between cost for them. And that's why we've been trying to work on continuing the education out there, but also breaking it down into like the 4 different things that we send out to intended parents of like, hey, when you're looking at surrogates, this
Just a
is
few points.
important to know that you're going to have 4 different categories and the difference between each category financially. And where does your surrogate land? And we talk to them in a realistic standpoint of like, if you want a surrogate that is not working because then you don't have lost wages and has surrogate friendly insurance, okay, well, you're going to wait a while and you have to then be okay with waiting. So then we go into a whole opportunity cost situation. And so I might tell them like, you might find somebody who is not employed but doesn't carry insurance who's ready right now. But if you wait, you may be waiting 6 to 8 months. And are you comfortable with that? So you have to, there's so much, I tell them all the time, you have to weigh everything. You have to weigh your time frame, overall your budget, and connection. If you really like the GC, that means something too.
Right.
So
Yeah, I know, and I hear this phrase all the time in surrogacy because you're like, "Well, in the grand scheme of things,
everything, right?
another 15,000."
What is it?
Yeah,
But I think not, I mean, you budget, everyone budgets, but as humans, we have a tendency to say, okay, it could be between 150 to 200,000, but internally, you still are hoping for that 150.
of course. Yeah,
So when it starts to venture up, there's disappointment that happens. Even though you had a budget of
of
up to
course.
2, there's still disappointment that you're not at that 150 that you thought, crossing your fingers for.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Shame on all of us whenever we're given a ballpark range to ever think it would be the lower end,
Right, right.
'cause it
Agreed.
just never is.
It never is. I agree.
Yeah, you mentioned that thing about life insurance. Are you seeing agencies I'm sure there are just agencies that, we all have our favorites.
Oh, I'm like a parent with children. None of you are my favorites. I love
Well, I
you
love
all
you
the
all
same.
equally.
I love you all equally.
Well, but a lot of parents say that, and then they're like, "But I do have a favorite."
I will say there are ones that are easier to work with.
Sure, of course. Well, the where I was going with this question was, and I think the way I phrased this in our outline was like, if your best friend started a surrogacy agency and was like, "Sarah, we wanna be
Yeah,
top of the line."
yeah,
What's the package look like for insurance that are kind of like in the major
yeah, I
categories?
got this.
Okay.
Let's do this.
Okay, give it to me.
First and foremost, I absolutely 100% would start life insurance at match because there's so many things that can happen with the gestational carrier as she's going through screening. So life insurance needs to be in there. At this point in time, I think 750 is the right amount. I don't think it should be less than that. I know a lot of people are still doing 5, but if I were going to do tip top, 750, no questions asked.
Yeah, top shelf the whole thing.
Top shelf the whole thing. Then I would absolutely unequivocally do what's called complications insurance, which is for the IVF procedure because many insurances do not cover that. And it's $300. And so it can cover up to $250,000 of medical expenses. I don't know why people don't get it. If I were doing something, 100% would do that. Depending on the state that I was in, I would go ACA, which is Affordable Care Act. But if I were in certain counties in California or even in Texas, I likely would push into a Lloyd's policy and budget for Lloyd's because I think that it's more flexible and can create more cohesive actual physical care for the gestational carrier. So I wouldn't even do ACA. I would go,
So, okay, so, just describe that a little bit because people
yeah,
might know the difference between, like, what's Lloyd's versus
yeah,
ACA.
yeah. So ACA is your commercial market insurance plan. So if I were to go out and purchase an insurance plan, just being an individual, I would have to go through the Affordable Care Act marketplace to get insurance. They are private companies, but they have to follow the Affordable Care Act guidelines. So that's in any one of us has access to that. The Lloyd's market is a specialty market that offers insurance for very, very specific things. So the best thing I can tell somebody is like, Cher's legs and Jennifer Lopez's rear end, or like a baseball pitcher's arm, right, is insured. That is all through Lloyd's. They do very, very specialized insurances for things that a normal commercial market may not cover. And so the Lloyd's market we have products that are very specific to just surrogacy. They're great policies, are just expensive because they're written for usage.
And are those available year round
They're
then?
available year round.
Okay. But do those bump you into that, like, $35,000 category?
They do. That's where it's gonna bump you up into that 35,000. Yeah.
Ok, so back to the top shelf, push towards Lloyd's, not ACA.
Yes. Then I would, if she were working, I would check to see if there's any regular disability that's available to her through her employer, or if the employer is willing to get a disability policy, because sometimes they can get it at no cost to the employer. They just offer it to their employees. They're going to get the best coverage there. If they cannot do that, or it's not offered, or the state doesn't pay for it, then I would get through Lloyd's. It's a complications policy if she goes on medical bed rest. That's important for especially lost wages.
And is that something that when you're doing the review, you would tell somebody like, "Hey, she doesn't have disability, so have her go check with her employer first?"
If we are talking to them, yes. We do offer disability reviews where people go check to see if she has it anywhere else, because you will have better coverage with something else outside of what I can offer. I think that's always important to note. And then other than that, I would do loss of organs, and I would do a minimum of 1530.
What does that mean?
15,000 for partial loss and 30,000 for full loss. When I see contracts that are still in the 3 and 6 range, just as a woman, I think internally bothers me. So I'm like, I think a full hysterectomy is worth a little bit more than $6,000. So I like to see things more in that $15,000 to $30,000 range for that. I also would get permanent and total disability for her too. In case something happens, there's a payout of up to $250,000 if she were to become totally or, permanently disabled in some capacity for the surrogacy. Some of these things are low risk, but if we're talking about kind of making sure and top tiered, I would put together an entire package to ensure that no matter what happened during that surrogacy, she feels financially secure in what potentially could happen to her own body, as would the intended parents.
To me, top shelf insurance feels like it would be a massive marketing angle for
People are trying to save, I can tell you there's a lot of feels, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it feels that people try to save money where they can. And so they're always looking at it from a perspective of, if an agency requires certain things, people may be deterred from that versus just saying, hey, go talk to Art Risk and make that decision on your own. A lot of agencies like to do that, which I totally do understand. I do think that if I were to do an agency, there are certain things that just would be non-negotiable. I would also, if you had two policies, meaning like you had your own, but we had to get you an ACA policy, I would require claims management, and I would require premium bill monitoring, where we monitor the premiums every month to ensure that that policy is safe and good and in active standing. I would say we have at least 20 cases every single year where the agency was monitoring it and they did not pay the premium and the insurance was lost and it lapsed and we cannot get the insurance back. And so
surrogate
then
surrogate know that, or if, like,
no, they typically don't know until the agency will call us and say, "Hey, we messed up and can you help us?" And sometimes we can and get it reinstated, but a lot of times we can't.
so surrogate's just bumping along thinking everything's fine and something could
As
happen.
is the intended parent, and then all of a sudden there is no insurance. Done.
Wait, that is huge.
It's huge and only 40% of our clients get it.
Whoa, I feel like that should be mandatory just to make sure that.
I'm telling you, if I was running an agency, it's 100% something that I would make mandatory.
And I feel like, okay, agencies, if you're listening, this is a giant marketing angle because this is, as an IP and a surrogate, you're not buying insurance, you're buying peace of mind and
Right,
security, and
right.
that has such an incredible value on these ridiculously arduous journeys. So, like, as an agency, I would be building a brand around the safest, most secure. Not
Yeah,
only will we help you build your family, you'll have peace of mind throughout the entire journey, knowing that every single aspect
it's
is
covered and handled for you.
covered. Yeah. And that we are the most diligent in terms of
Yeah.
I's and T's being
Yeah.
dotted and crossed.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Wait, and that is petrifying as an IP or a surrogate.
Yeah. Yes. This is how I look at it too. Like, if you didn't offer it to the intended parent and the cost is at most $550 to do the monitoring and not on a monthly basis. For 2 years of service, it's $550. That's it.
This is a competitive advantage when you know surrogates and IPs are talking to multiple
Yeah.
agencies.
And we have some agencies that will say like, well, we do that internally. And And some of them do it wonderfully. They really do. Like and if they have a question about it, they'll call in and say, we saw this, is this normal? And we can help them out, like determine if it is or not. There's two factors to that. One, you're taking on a heck of a lot of liability in doing that when you are not super well versed if something goes wrong, right? Like if something were to happen or go wrong, you're spending a lot of your time, but also you can't point fingers at anybody else. It's going to land on you. So like, I don't know. I think always try to be like, where can I point fingers outside of myself, liability
Totally fair.
wise? Like, where can I get things off of me and let me focus in on exactly what our specialty is and what we're really good at. That's number one. And then number two is like, you have to tell an intended parent, no, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't offer this. Yes, it was available. And now you don't have insurance.
And it was $500.
And it was $500. I've been in those conversations and they don't go over well for the agencies at all.
No,
Yeah.
that to me just feels like a giant advantage for an agency that is
Yeah.
willing to mandate the $500 to give complete peace of mind
Yeah.
to surrogate and IP and use that as a marketing advantage.
Yeah. And some do, and they do a great job at it. 60% don't.
Yeah. Okay. I know you don't just work with agencies because you will help independent journeys.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
And so do independent journeys offer more complexity then? Because angel.
always,
Okay.
always. So we opened up the department, and that group they're just so wonderful working, and their hearts are in the most beautiful place for independence. Patients, they know exactly that there needs to be a lot of handholding, a lot of reminders, because it's not only the kindness, but it's also because they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
No, you cannot talk to them as you would typically another intended parent or an agency. It's a completely different type of conversation. There's so much they don't know. A lot more handholding than I would say we do necessarily with agencies because agencies, we have such good direct communication with them and the agencies are managing over and over like, okay, they're at this stage in the journey. Let's get connected here, right? Like they're managing all of that. On the independent realm, they're not. And so we end up taking on just with the insurance stuff of all of those updates, reminders, follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up to make sure that they get what they need.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So is intended parent, for example, like, hey, surrogate I just matched with on a Facebook group, will you
Yeah.
send me your insurance policy so then I can then give our risk? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And we do tell the intended parents, and I would love it if actually more took us up on the offer to have a conversation with the gestational carrier and have a meeting with all of us because I do think that with an agency, the GC is getting support from the agency. When they're an independent match, the GCs take on a lot of the agency role because a lot of them have done surrogacy before. And so they're going independent, but there's a lot that they didn't know that their agency did for them.
Yeah.
And so part of it is to have that conversation of, hey, these are things that you need to be aware of in the insurance realm. But if it comes down, what's your first step? Your first step's always going to be to call us and trying to create a relationship with them. So there's a comfort level that they want to be able to come to us and say, hey, this happened. Like we had a GC who she didn't pay her premium. Same thing. She lost her insurance and she came to us. She's like, I don't know what to say to the intended parent. And we're like, okay, well, let's go through what happened and then we'll be on the call with you.
Sarah, these feel like way too important for somebody to like miss a payment and lose insurance. Like,
Yeah. It it's so interesting because with the GCs, it goes some of this will go back to financial stability and really looking to make
yeah.
sure that a GC is not going paycheck to paycheck because life happens. And in some of these situations, the life that happened was that their fridge went out. And so they used money to have a repair person come out. Someone's dad was on their deathbed. And so they flew up to go see him because they couldn't take that much time off of work to do the drive. And so they used the money to go fly and see. We had somebody else whose kid ended up breaking their arm. They had a deductible. They didn't know the deductible was so high. But these are people that are living more along the lines of paycheck to paycheck. And so when they get funds for certain things in surrogacy, their life continues on and those bills continue on. And sometimes that money ends up getting used for things that it shouldn't be.
Why isn't that going into, like, escrow and escrow making payments out to
So,
insurance?
not all the time. Depends on the escrow company, but not every escrow company can make payments on behalf of GCs depending on the insurance company. So sometimes it's just the nature of the insurance doesn't allow any third party payer. So that means that the GC has to have the money. There are a couple different escrow companies that we have talked to and have very kindly set up like basically escrow credit cards that are in the GC's name. See Trust does it, Clarity does it. Yeah, there's a couple that do it, which is really nice because then we can use that card and the GC is not responsible for that. But not everybody uses either one of those. I even had an agency that's like, oh, well, we just have never tried it out. And I was like, please sign up for this. It's
Yeah.
free. Just tell them you want it. It's sitting there for you. Like, let's not dicker around with this. Let's make sure that we get this done so that it's easier on all parties to
Did
do
you
this.
just say let's not dicker around?
I did.
I've never heard dicker. Is that where don't dick around comes from? I
I
don't
mean,
know.
my family says dicker.
I don't know, but that's
So
fantastic.
I could be saying something that maybe needs to be cut out. I don't know. I'll be honest.
I don't know. I'm gonna look it up though after this call. Okay, that's really helpful to know, and I think that I mean it's just so I mean it this whole all these journeys just feel like dominoes because one is so dependent on the next piece of it, is so dependent on the next piece of it, and so to get this piece set up correctly means intake has to be set up correctly, and then
Right.
post has to be set up correctly.
Right. Right.
Do you always have to be reviewing this, or is there an agency that can be reviewing as kind of the similar to what agencies do with medical records? Like, we're gonna look at the first pass,
Like,
and then we're gonna pass it.
preliminarily look at it, but things yeah. A lot of agencies do, and we will help them also preliminarily look at it. We just say, "Hey," there's certain states where they actually cannot review it themselves, legally, they have to have a third party reviewed. I think that is always best practice. So words that I would say that they could do, like a control find to really quickly look, would be surrogate, surrogacy, host uterus, which is a fun one.
Interesting.
Host uterus, yeah. It's fine. Um, a gestational carrier. So I would say, like, you could control find those words and see what it says. What I would tell people, though, is that one of the common misconceptions is that sometimes they'll see that underneath an exclusion, and so then they automatically think it does not cover. And because of the way it's either worded and or the location of the exclusion, it doesn't apply to maternity, or it actually doesn't even apply to the surrogate who's a member of the policy. So I always tell people, hey, if you see something in there that's not, I mean clear as day, where it says, like, if a member is acting as a surrogate, all of her maternity expenses will be excluded. That's clear. I
Yeah.
gotcha. You can send it over to us. We're going to take a look at that and go, yeah, it's clear. We're going to cancel out the review. I'm not reviewing something that's clear as day. We don't do that. But don't assume that it doesn't. And I think there's a lot of times that they do the prelim reviews, which I think they should do the prelim reviews. I think it's actually really smart for them to just kind of scan it real quick and see, does this work? Does it not? But I would not say that you should go forward and just use that.
Yeah.
Yeah, assume, because assumptions are incorrect. And then insurance then becomes mismanaged.
Yeah. That's interesting. You said the ACA, so 2026 is what it is in terms of dates, but in
Yeah.
2027, it's going to be even shorter.
Yeah.
And so, how are you telling agencies to start preparing for that?
So we haven't yet. We did tell them back in October timeframe this is coming. And then we are going to hold a webinar in March to explain to them this is all the dates, this is what's going on, and this is how we are going to be handling it so that you can start prepping
Okay.
your journeys, your intended parents, your staff, your marketing, like all the things for this year that you need to do. That's going to be happening in early March for everybody.
We can post those session dates in our show notes too
I
for people
love it. Okay, perfect.
and links out to them. Yeah.
Great.
And then any other kind of volatility with ACA that you think this might be coming?
I mean, networks are always a continual issue, and I think every year they get worse. Something in terms of volatility that will continue and likely get worse is going to be small networks not being able to access certain things, having a hospital in, and then not having to OBs in there, but no OBs that actually deliver at the hospital that's in network. Just crazy things that we see um, all the time. Being prepared for those, and also being prepared to look at alternative options such as that Lloyd's policy and having realistic conversations with intended parents and not promising. I always tell everybody, please don't promise ACA, because then
Yeah.
you try and fit square pegs into round holes and then everyone's upset because it doesn't work the way you want it to.
Well, especially if those timelines are going to be shrinking.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like we've got to, and because they're shrinking, like everyone's got to be on their A game next year. There's no waiting and seeing, or we'll check in, we'll get her through this point and then get an ACA. Like, nope, you got to have your list ready to go, give to us, and we'll work through it together.
Yeah. Well, and that's crazy for your team too. That's a mad rush.
It's a mad rush because typically we do about 40% of our business in December and then 60% in January. So we're moving all of it. And the hardest part that we've talked about is that even though the ACA opens November 1st, not all booklets have been released. We don't know all the systems yet because they don't let us into the systems prior to. So we are going to have to learn all of those systems, get all of those booklets in, and process everything. And processing 100% of all of our stuff in a very, very shortened period of time. So we are also working on trying to set up a timeline for us of like, when can we start? Who do we like resource wise? Who do we need to have over there so we can get it all in, but still remain really tight because you can't have too many people working.
So, yeah, when you're onboarding team members, do you mandate that the families of the team members that you have celebrate Christmas in February?
We let everybody know ahead of time our blackout dates before we hire anybody and what the
Christmas is
expectation
canceled,
is.
everybody.
I mean, we have 60 people who sign up for this every year for us, and a lot of our team has been with us for over 5 years, and this is they know what to do. And also there's outside of open enrollment, Erin, it's not like that. Like, you wanna go take the weekend off, or,
Do it.
like, a couple days and go take off, like, I don't care. Even during open enrollment, anything having to do with family or kids takes precedence. It doesn't matter. If there's a wedding that it needs to be gone to, if your kid gets sick, if you have a school performance for Christmas or holiday performance, like, all of that all of that still takes precedence over what we're doing
Isn't
with
that funny?
everyone.
Because we're also like, we happen to be in family buildings, so we just know how important family is, more so
Right.
than other fields or
Yeah.
categories.
Yeah.
Okay, got one more question for you, and it's I don't know if you've listened to the podcast, we call it the magic wand. And so we're gonna give you a magic wand, and with this magic wand, you can change one thing in terms of how insurance is handled in surrogacy. What do you change?
Okay, I have questions about this. Because this is how my brain works. Is it one thing that I could change on any level, anywhere? It does not even with an agency, but like maybe I just want one thing in insurance to change.
Yes.
Okay. Can I have 5 ones? This is my next question.
No.
1
But we'll
want.
give you 2. We'll give you 2. It's
Okay.
early in 2026. We'll give you 2. People try to cheat. They try to get like 10. Well, you can have 2.
Okay, I appreciate the 2. Okay. My first magic wand that would be that ACA opens up all year so that we're not having to play this game every single time, and that it becomes a more easy, free market, relaxed environment. And it would actually shift the way that people can market and all this rush that has to happen.
Feel like that's ever a reality?
No,
Okay.
no. Unless we dismantled ACA, which I don't really feel like I would like that to happen either. No.
It doesn't sound like the government is into that either.
No, apparently not. No, no one's really touched it. I mean, that's the interesting thing. They've made like tweaks and changes, but like it doesn't matter what side you're on.
Okay.
And I think my second magic wand would be, I would say that you got to see whatever doctor and whatever hospital you wanted to go to, that there weren't stipulations in networks or in cost prohibitions with different insurance companies, but that you got to choose, the GC got to choose whom, or the IPs, whomever they wanted, so that everyone felt very comfortable and secure in their journey, because there's a lot of concessions that have to be made on networks and doctors. And as a person who has loved certain doctors, and then when I'm not allowed to see that doctor anymore, has felt the devastation of not being able to see them or paying crazy amounts of money. I don't wish that on anybody. So those would be my two things. I would love to see way more open networks and let everybody go see who they want to see. And I'd love to see ACA not be in this teeny.
Yeah, our mutual friend Kim Surratt was on the show a while ago, and she was saying that pregnancy should just be pregnancy. That the stipulation of surrogacy should
Yeah.
be removed because, like,
Yes.
I'm just pregnant,
Yes.
which I can
Yes.
understand. Like, if a woman decides to have 6 children versus 1 child and be a surrogate, like,
Right.
what's the difference?
Right. There should not be
Yeah. Okay.
ever.
All
So if
right.
I get a third one,
Third one.
mine would be that you can't discriminate.
Okay. All right. Fair. We'll give you 3. We're generous early in the year. Okay. Well, Sarah, I know most people know who you are in this business, but if people want to reach out or contact you, how do they do that?
Yeah, the best way to do that is through info@yourinsuranceresource.com or call into our office. Those are kind of, and our website is artriskSolutions.com. So any of those areas are perfect.
Well, thank you for taking time. I know you're not out of open enrollment yet, so we're really grateful that you took an hour to spend with us during
Thank
open
you
enrollment.
guys. This has been fun, Erin.
Okay, good. Well, we'll see you soon. Thanks so much for listening to The Future of Surrogacy. If you liked today's episode, send it to a friend or a colleague that should hear it. And be sure to follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn to keep up with new episodes and behind the scenes updates. And if there's a topic you want us to cover or someone you think we should talk to, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. We'll see you next time.